We are now in phase two, thanks to a lot of great work by a lot of people, not only the teams working on this, but also the people throughout this region who have really taken the steps to keep this virus going down. We heard about this morning, actually, we're the first region to be called this morning by the governor's team announcing this before he made the announcement, which we greatly appreciated. And we're just very happy to get to this point. I want to clarify one thing. There's a lot of histrionics going on yesterday about when's it going to happen. Is it Friday? I have said repeatedly, really for the last couple of weeks or more, the governor's always said there's going to be at least 2 weeks in between phases. I always reinforce it, keywords at least. Today is exactly 2 weeks. He announced it finalized at 1 p.m. But he gave his rationale today. He had 2 experts looking at the data. I'm very proud in Finger Lakes. We've had a couple of spikes, but our data looks very good. So we could not be happier. And listen, I get the frustration. We understand how people feel. We get that. We put that forth every day. And I think, Berkeley asked me a question the other day. We are as strong an advocate for businesses as anybody could imagine. They might not think so, because I think we have people that certainly are putting out different messaging, but I would see my colleagues in a control room, Democrats, Republicans, county officials, local officials, city officials, hospital systems, everybody. We want folks to be open, and we're advocating for that. One example I will tell you, the guidelines that came out today. A business owner reached out to me this afternoon. I don't want to out the business, but they point out that there was a provision that basically could not operate her business with that provision. And it was a dressing room, and it was a wedding dress business. I took it. I thought, great feedback. Thank you very much. I called the governor's council, reached out to the governor's council. That guideline was updated in probably 90 seconds. It's an oversight. We have people that are working around the clock, and the feedback that people give us, they call, they email. I get the anger and frustration with some. We get it. And I understand it. I appreciate it. We work through that, trying to make sure we advocate for them, get their information, their plans, their suggestions, their frustrations to the people making decisions. And we do that every single day and have since the beginning of this.
Okay, if you have a question, please use the chat function, and I'll call you in the order received. Speaking of Berkeley, we'll start with Berkeley Breen.
Finally, I'm first. That feels great. Bob, real quick, why were malls not included in phase two?
Well, I asked that question today as well, because retail is open. I think malls, by the virtue of the way they're set up, you have a high probability of density of people going in. What I believe will be approved are stores at a mall that perhaps have an entrance outside, not from the common area, where they can still operate. But the concerns right now are high density activities where people are together. So that's coming, but we're working out, I think, some issues with the governor's council and team on not every store perhaps, but a lot of stores, if they have that outside access per the governor's attorney this morning. I do believe we can move ahead with that. We're going to finalize that tonight, but we are pushing and helping every single day to get that. Malls will be coming up next. As you know, haircutting was approved today. I'll go on record, 3 months without a haircut. Looking forward to that. Haircutting for men and women, but not nails, not waxing. There's certain provisions, not yet. But that'll be coming. I think every time we're putting information together, we send it to them. And I would say right now, phase two being open for us, 5 regions. Buffalo is not open yet, but the governor's team already is preparing for phase 3, looking at the regulations. So I think we're on a roll right here. We just have to stay on course and keep going. We all want to be open, but to be open safely.
Andrew Freeman has our next question.
Hi, how are you, Bob? My question is just, you talked about the frustration. But I was wondering if you could also just address the confusion. I know there's a lot of business owners right now that are like, all right, so I can open today. And then we've got hair salons wondering, they're saying we got to be tested every 2 weeks, but do we have to wait for those results? Can we still work while we're waiting for those results? So I guess I was just wondering what you could address about that.
Well, first of all, great question. The provisions really came out, early this morning, last night. So we're going through those right now. Hair salons can open now. Go through the guidelines, forward.ny.gov. The guidelines are there. And there is a provision for testing, but not as you open. I believe it's every 2 weeks or every 14 days. Monroe Community College has a drive-through testing facility. I believe there's no cost at all. That results come back fairly quickly. So you can get that, but it is to really prepare a safe work environment. And these things come up for one reason. And for those that criticize the governor, if you do not open safely, say I go into a hair barbershop tomorrow, and Berkeley or somebody, whoever runs the shop, is not taking care of that the safety measures, I get sick. That shop could be liable legally for not taking steps. So we want to protect businesses, have those plans in place, and our barbers for the foreseeable future are going to be having not only a face covering but also a shield. And County Executive Adam Bello is making provisions right now to distribute face shields to those businesses that need them, which I think is a great, really a great gesture on behalf of the county executive's part.
And if I could just follow up though, not just barbershops, but even like retail stores. If I was a retail store, opening up this evening or first thing tomorrow morning, what's important that I keep in mind?
Most important thing, and look at the provisions, you can boil it down to these things. Face coverings if you can't stay more than 6 feet away. Hand sanitizing, obviously with soap and water at best. The social distancing, obviously that 6 feet or more distance between you. And then a constant disinfecting, surfaces, phones, things that customers touch. Those 4 things will carry the day with any plan any business puts in place.
Thank you.
If you have a question, go ahead and put down in the chat area. We're going to move on now to Dan Schrack.
Hi there. Thank you for talking with us this afternoon, speaking with us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
So my question, undoubtedly, without a doubt, there has been a lot of confusion around today. Whether or not we would be entering phase 2, what businesses would be allowed to open. And as you said just a moment ago, that list was updated very early this morning. My question is, why are these decisions not being made well in advance? Why are some business owners today who thought they were going to be opening just finding out today that they're no longer allowed to open? I mean, they've got inventory, they've got staffing, they've got scheduling, they've got a dozen things that they need to account for on a minimum, and then their plans get squashed and the rug gets pulled out from under them, and they don't know what to do. Now they're in phase maybe 3 or maybe phase 4. There's definitely some confusion there that I think needs to be explained to people.
I think one of the foundations for confusion is sometimes people are making announcements that are guessing and don't have the facts. I've said consistently, I am not going to guess. The governor makes these decisions. And the incubation period is at least 2 weeks. So phase 1 started on May 15th. Technically, today marks 2 weeks. If the governor was going to be super cautious, he could push that out for another week or 2, but he wants to open businesses up. So in essence, he's taking a bit of a chance doing it now, but he had 2 experts last night going through all the health data. I'm proud to say the Finger Lakes does look really good, and we've been very happy with that. But it is that issue when you have people at that level, and whether you are the governor, the president, you're making these decisions, you will be criticized for whatever you do. So I understand the caution. And keep in mind, there's no playbook for a pandemic. I've never led a government entity during a pandemic. So this is the governor's first. He's had a lot of issues, floods, hurricanes. I'm sure the president has had his share of priorities and emergencies, but this is the first time. And certainly people are going to question what is being done. But what the governor does not want to do is open too quickly, bow to public pressure, and then have it close again. And every day a business is closed, that business is impacted. So is the state, local government as well. I mean, we want to get people back on track. We really do. I mean, I cannot wait until we are through phase 4 and going down the road and hopefully staying safe. But a lot of people will make their suggestions. I don't ever predict it's going to be on a certain date. I don't know. And I would tell people continually, even on calls I'm on, don't get out in front of the governor. Wait for him to make that announcement when he is ready. He never said on the 29th of May we'll open. He never said that. It's at least 2 weeks. I think people surmised what it was. And I do think that, along with different areas of the state, people have made suggestions, comments. I think it's just a lot of, it caused confusion. And nobody did anything wrong intentionally. It's just that they're anxious. They want to get back on track. And I think we just have to kind of hold that communication until you get the facts. And I'm eternally cautious with this. Listen, this is a volunteer position. I get blamed for everything, but I obviously do not have the authority to make decisions. But every single day, myself and my team here, from early in the morning with over 100 emails to late at night, getting things to the governor's team. The example I gave earlier, they have been super responsive. They really have. A lot of complexities here, but we were the first region to be announced. We're ahead of many other regions, including our neighbors to the west in Buffalo, but we're doing it safely. And I think that's the part that this is why the governor's doing this. And I kept telling people, do not predict a date. He did not give a date. And he was a little confused today when people were questioning him at the press conference. I watched him today about today's 2 weeks. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon versus the morning. He could have put it off to next Monday or Tuesday. But the most important thing is we're open. I want to make one last point. The hundreds and hundreds of businesses around this region, which we have talked to, emailed, communicated, called, I've said going back over 2 months, prepare your plan now. So when it opens up, you're ready to go. Now, staffing is another issue, getting people back to work. That's another challenge for some. But I really advise people, get ready so you're not wasting one day once that decision comes down.
And you're absolutely right. Assumptions may have been made that things would be reopening today. However, when there's a list of what sort of businesses can reopen on when we enter certain phases, and then that list at the 11th hour is updated, that's doing a disservice to those businesses.
Well, I think, I understand the communication issue. If things that might have been pulled back are probably for some concerns that were raised with the analysis of the data. Because, listen, this is far above my pay grade, but the people that are analyzing these businesses, what's the percentage of infection rates? So I think a lot of that comes into play. I'm not in the room in Albany as they go through all of the analytics with the experts. I'm not there. My job is to advocate for the businesses here and help to get them back open as soon as you can. Ask the right questions, push things, but also defer to the governor that he's responsible. He's got to make those. And I think that's why some maybe get pulled off. And the issue of restaurants. And I was on record. I called Supervisor Riley today. He called me back. I've known Bill for 20 years. We're in a good place. We understand. Bill did not mean to infer they're going to get out in front. And we weren't going back and forth at him. I just did not want Bill or the businesses to go out too far before state liquor authority or the executive order allows it. And I think, listen, he's a town supervisor. He's anxious for his businesses. I support that. Known Bill for years, but we talked today. It was great. Had a great conversation, and we have our cell phones back and forth. And it was a miscommunication. But these are crazy times where I think the emotions are running high, the anger is running high, especially those who are impacted financially and physically. It has been horrible for them. So the faster we get up and get back to the normal, the better.
If you have a question, let me know in the chat function. We're going to move on now to Patty Singer.
Bob, you talked about moving quickly, but then, governor could have taken 2 more weeks on this. Once someone gets that first haircut, right, how do you guard against them thinking that this is over, everybody rushes out, and we end up backsliding, but we have to close things down, or phase 3 gets pushed out 4 to 5 to 6 weeks?
Maybe that's a possibility. I think the way we prevent that is following the guidelines. Those 4 things I mentioned. Having a face covering. Barbers and people cutting in salons, face coverings and shields. Gloves are optional right now, but these precautions are in place to protect the customer and the employees. I'll give you just an example. This past weekend, we have a healthcare worker who went to 2 parties over the holiday. No masks, was close to 30 people. She has tested positive. The county is going back, tracking all 30 people to see if they get tested and see if they were exposed to it. But when we don't pay attention to the guidelines, and listen, I get all these debates, people don't want to wear a mask. I say this consistently. I hate wearing a mask. When I wear a mask, if I'm out, if I get out of my car coming in, I go to a business, I wear a mask. I'm going to protect others and myself. And for those that say it doesn't work 100%, no. Seatbelts don't guarantee you if you get in an accident, your life will be saved, but it gives you a pretty good shot at preventing that. And so do the masks. And that's why the medical experts push those. So I think having those things in place when you get your haircut, hopefully will slow down any spread. But going back to your point, Patty, the incubation period usually is at least 14 days. You could still be asymptomatic and not know but be carrying the virus around. So there's no exact science for this, but if we follow those guidelines, I think more often than not, we are going to slow and prevent the spread.
We'll have some time for follow-ups in a moment. We're going to move on now to Tracy at the DNC.
Hi, Bob. We talked a couple days ago about the outdoor dining, and you when we talked, it seemed like you thought that the outdoor dining might be an okay way to go. Is there a reason that it? I know the New York State Restaurant Association was advocating in favor of that being part of phase 2. So how did that go down? Do you know?
Well, I know they're discussing this. Believe me, and as Bill and I talked today, I support we do in this region outdoor dining because you can actually increase the capacity for a restaurant who've taken a lot of hits with just takeouts, and they can't fill up an inside dining room so much. So we support that. Part of that change, especially if you serve alcohol, would require an SLA change. And I can tell you right now, the governor's team is looking at all these. Nobody's saying no. They're trying to figure out how best to do it. So I referenced my conversations today with Supervisor Rylick. We're on the same page. We really are. We're in no disagreement. It's just as a process, they have to go through and make this evaluation. Now, I don't think they indicated this would happen in phase. I never heard this was going to happen in phase 2. I've always heard phase 3. It may have come up in some discussions, but I'm not privy to those. But then again, the governor has the prerogative to announce what he's going to do. And if I were to make a prediction, once we get to a point in this region, maybe across the state, but right here, where restaurants are back open to a pretty strong degree, the barbershops, salons, they're open, the fitness centers, I think the anxiety level for people will go down dramatically. I mean, I think from a business owner to people that participate as customers, I think all this is causing so much pain, so much anxiety, so much uncertainty, and we're slowly but surely getting there. I can't guarantee that will be in phase 3. I have said this repeatedly. I would be wrong to say, yes, it'll happen. I don't know. The governor has a prerogative. He can come out in 2 weeks and make an announcement if he wants to. But I do know they are weighing in very heavily. I've heard no negative feedback on those suggestions. And I got to go back to my point. When people say, hey, Bob, what are you doing? Every single day from before 6 a.m. to probably 11 o'clock at night, we are sharing, pushing information, supporting people here consistently every single day. And I do think a lot of the guidelines that come out are reflective of input that we are providing. I dare make one prediction. I'll guarantee you there's not a section or a region in the state that has provided more information to that group of leaders down with the governor and his team going through all these analytics than we have. I will guarantee nobody's even come close. Every single day, we're getting things to them. Very thoughtful, smart plans, great ideas, feedback. I might add too, not only a feedback from restaurant owners and people that want to go back to work, also feedback about the fear factor. There are people that are fearful. 80% of this state agree with Governor Cuomo at the pace he's going with right now, moving along methodically. The same number agree with the masks. I mean, we hear people don't want to wear a mask. My feeling is, you don't want to wear a mask? Don't wear a mask. Just don't be around my family, my friends, my coworkers, my team. If you want to be on your own, do that. But that's some of the feedback that we are getting from that, but we're getting there for a reason. 89%, the last poll that I saw, approved the masks, and the governor has like a high 70s approval rating. This is not like everybody's against it. We have a very vocal group here. I get that. We answer them. I'm respectful to their views. Some things I may not agree with, but I'm very respectful of them, and I understand the anger. I just went back and forth with a restaurant owner today, a restaurant which I go to, and I've been a customer many times, and I love it. I understand his frustration. I can't tell him a date, but I can tell him we are working so hard to get you back up and running again.
Anyone has a follow-up or an initial question, let me know in the chat. We have a follow-up from Patty.
Hi, yeah, Bob, you had mentioned, you gave the analogy of seatbelt saving lives, like that. I can get a ticket if I'm driving down the street. I can get pulled, I can get a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. Bello and Mendoza and other people said that they're not really going to enforce masks. What's going to happen in public, or what's going to happen with businesses to enforce this so we don't backslide, don't end up with more cases and having to shut down or delaying phase 3 or 4, 2, 4, 6 weeks out?
Well, I think here's the issue I would raise. If you're out and you can stay 6 feet apart, you're not required to wear a mask, and you can stay distant. And if I'm in my car driving by myself, I'm not wearing a mask. I get out, I put it on. I do think that nobody wants a confrontation. Wegmans suggests everybody wear a mask. I've been in there many times. I would say 99.9% wear them. Some people don't. The governor put on an order out yesterday allowing businesses to refuse service to anyone coming in without a mask. And I think it's a good thing a business can do. If they don't want to do it, they don't want a confrontation. You look at some of the stories around the country, there's been some very violent reactions about the pro and anti-mask people, which this defies logic. A seatbelt, yes, a seatbelt, you get a ticket. If you don't wear a seatbelt and you get into an accident, you may die. You may get hurt. You may have a serious injury. If you don't wear a mask, you may get this horrible virus. And I would say, ask anybody who's gone through this and say, would you want to go through it again? I think wearing a mask is probably, and the things I mentioned, a very small way to prevent it, to protect yourself, protect your family, and not go through the pains of this virus. So I think the county exec is right. Are they going to send a sheriff's department out to arrest people? No. And for businesses, we don't want anybody to suffer enforcement, to suffer loss. In many ways, just, be respectful of other people. And I think if you keep that principle with a distance, you're not making a political statement. You're not a tough guy if you don't want to wear a mask. I think you're, quite frankly, if you're around people, you're not very smart. I think we do that to protect ourselves and our families. And I've seen overwhelming numbers. Urban, suburban, rural, people wearing masks repeatedly. Everybody? No, not everybody, but a large number. So people really are following it, and they get it. And I appreciate what they're doing because their common sense and they're following these guidelines have helped us to get through phase 1 and now into phase 2. If they didn't, if nobody wore a mask and our infection rates went through the ceiling, we would not be open today for phase 2. We would not. The numbers really matter. So people in this region have been terrific.
Have a follow-up from Dan.
Thank you. So to continue on about the phased reopening, some are now calling on their county leaders, county officials, county executives to have more of a hand in this phased reopening process, especially with the scare that there was phase 2 was not actually going to start today. One county official that I spoke with this morning said that had that order not come from the governor today saying that, hey, yes, we are entering phase 2 in the Finger Lakes region, that his county was fully prepared to begin phase 2. And he said that they were not aware that we were entering phase 2 until he heard it on the television, heard the actual news conference. So I'm wondering if I can just get a reaction from you on that, on what your thoughts are on allowing counties to have more of a hand in this.
Well, first of all, in our control room, which is not an enforcement tool, is a group that monitors the health metrics. Every county is represented with elected officials. County Executive Bello is on it. Mayor Warren is on it. We have town supervisors, those who are either board of supervisors, leaders, or elected county leaders around it. The hospital systems around it. So there are elected officials represented. And this morning at 9:30, we were on a call with the governor's team, and we all knew that it was going to happen today. They're going through the step-by-step the guidelines. So not that we were allowed to go out and announce it publicly yet until the governor got it, but they could have made calls to their fellow elected officials and said, just stand by, it's happening today. Because we knew at 9:30 this morning that phase 2 was coming to the Finger Lakes region. We were the very first region they called this morning. So I think going back to your point, I would agree. Every time we go through things like this, communication can always be improved at every level. And I appreciate that. I understand that. And sometimes if it lacks or lags, it does add to confusion. But I would just urge people not to make announcements, not to feel pressured. And the leaders we have in our Finger Lakes room, they've been fantastic. And listen, most of them are elected. It's an advisory group, so it's not a policy group, but they get pressured by their constituents. We do. And listen, I'll share my email with you someday. Every single day we get, a number of requests with variable levels of emotion attached to it. But you know what, to me, we just try and get answers to people as soon as we can. And I am very disciplined in what I say. I do not get out in front of the governor's decision-making. That's his prerogative. But I'm very passionate about getting information from this region into his hands and his team's hands. We've done that every single day throughout this pandemic.